Imagine being 400 kilometers above Earth. You're orbiting our planet at nearly 28,000 kilometers per hour. Outside the station, the vacuum of space waits silently. Inside, everything seems normal. Then suddenly, mission control tells you to prepare for a possible evacuation. Not because of an approaching asteroid. Not because of a fire. Not because of a collision. But because the station itself may be slowly leaking air. This isn't science fiction. This is exactly what happened aboard the International Space Station. For years, NASA and Roscosmos have been tracking a mysterious air leak inside the Russian segment of the ISS. Now, after years of concern, the situation has become serious enough that astronauts were recently instructed to prepare for a potential evacuation scenario. So what's really happening aboard humanity's most important space station? How dangerous is the leak? Could the ISS actually be approaching the end of its life? And what happens if the world's only permanent outpost in space can no longer remain operational? Today, we're taking a deep look into one of the most concerning stories currently unfolding in orbit. The most successful space project in human history. For more than 25 years, the International Space Station has represented one of humanity's greatest achievements. Built through cooperation between multiple nations, the station has served as a permanent laboratory in space. Since the year 2000, astronauts have continuously lived aboard the ISS. Every single day. For more than 2 decades, the station has hosted hundreds of astronauts from around the world. It has conducted thousands of scientific experiments. It has helped scientists understand how the human body responds to long-duration spaceflight. Without the ISS, future missions to the Moon and Mars would be significantly more difficult. But there is one problem. The ISS was never designed to operate forever. Like every machine ever built, it ages. And after decades in orbit, signs of wear are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The leak that wouldn't go away. The story begins several years ago. Engineers detected a small but persistent air leak coming from the Russian segment of the station. At first, the leak appeared manageable. Small leaks are not unusual in spacecraft. The ISS regularly loses tiny amounts of air that can be replaced through routine operations. But this leak was different. Despite multiple investigations, the problem never completely disappeared. Engineers continued monitoring pressure levels. Crews performed inspections. Additional sealing efforts were attempted. Yet concerns remained. The leak appeared to originate from an area connected to the Russian Zvezda service module. Over time, monitoring data suggested that the situation required continued attention. For NASA and Roscosmos, this became more than a maintenance issue. It became a long-term safety concern. Why air leaks are so dangerous? On Earth, a small leak might seem insignificant. In space, the situation is very different. The ISS survives because it maintains a carefully controlled atmosphere. Astronauts depend on that atmosphere every second. Without it, survival becomes impossible. The station exists in an environment where there is no air, no pressure, no protection, only vacuum. Any uncontrolled loss of atmosphere is treated seriously. Even a small leak can become dangerous if it grows larger. Engineers must constantly monitor pressure levels to ensure the station remains safe. Most of the time, astronauts don't notice anything unusual. The station's systems compensate for small losses. But mission controllers never stop watching. Because in space, minor problems can become major emergencies. The recent alert. Recently, NASA announced that astronauts aboard the ISS were instructed to prepare for a potential evacuation scenario. Immediately, headlines spread around the world. Many people assumed the station was in immediate danger. Others feared a catastrophic failure. The reality was more complicated. NASA emphasized that the crew remained safe throughout the event. No emergency evacuation actually occurred. However, astronauts were directed to enter a heightened state of readiness. As part of standard safety procedures, they moved closer to their emergency spacecraft and prepared for the possibility of rapid departure if conditions changed. This is an important distinction. Preparing for evacuation is not the same thing as evacuating. but it demonstrates how seriously mission controllers are treating the situation. When human lives are involved, space agencies prepare for every possible outcome. What would happen during an evacuation? Most people don't realize that astronauts aboard the ISS always have an escape vehicle available. At any given moment, spacecraft are docked to the station. These vehicles serve two purposes. First, they transport crews to and from Earth. Second, they function as lifeboats. If a serious emergency occurs, astronauts can quickly board their spacecraft and undock from the station. Within hours, they could begin returning home. This system has existed for decades. It ensures that astronauts are never trapped in orbit. In the recent situation, crews were instructed to remain ready to use those spacecraft if necessary. Fortunately, conditions never reached that point. The station remained stable. The crew remained safe. And normal operations eventually resumed. But the incident reminded everyone of an uncomfortable reality. The ISS is aging. The age of the station. When most people think about the ISS, they imagine cutting-edge technology. And much of it is. But parts of the station are surprisingly old. Some modules have been operating in orbit for decades. They have endured constant radiation exposure, temperature, extremes micrometeoroid impacts, structural stress, repeated pressurization cycles. Every orbit places stress on the structure. And the ISS completes approximately 16 orbits around Earth every single day. That means the station has circled Earth more than 150,000 times since the first modules were launched. No engineering system can endure such conditions forever. Eventually, aging becomes unavoidable. NASA's bigger concern. The leak itself is important, but it also represents something larger. A warning sign. Engineers worry that aging infrastructure could lead to more maintenance issues in the future. Every year becomes more challenging. More inspections. More repairs. More monitoring. The station continues performing remarkably well. Yet maintaining it requires increasing effort. NASA understands this reality. That is one reason the agency is already planning for the future. What comes after this? The International Space Station will not remain in orbit forever. Current plans call for retirement around 2030. When that happens, a new era of space stations is expected to begin. Unlike the ISS, many future stations will be operated by private companies. NASA has already partnered with several organizations developing next-generation orbital habitats. These commercial stations could eventually replace the ISS as destinations for research, technology development, and astronaut training. Some companies envision entire business ecosystems in orbit. Research laboratories, manufacturing facilities, tourism modules, private astronaut missions. The future of low Earth orbit may look very different from the government-led model that created the ISS. Why this matters for the Moon and Mars? The ISS is much more than a laboratory. It is a training ground. Every lesson learned aboard the station contributes to future exploration. Astronauts learn how to live in confined environments. Scientists study the effects of microgravity. Engineers test technologies needed for deep space missions. Without these experiences, returning to the Moon and eventually reaching Mars would become much more difficult. That is why maintaining a continuous human presence in space remains a priority. Whether aboard the ISS or future commercial stations, humanity needs places to learn how to survive beyond Earth. Is the ISS actually in danger? This is the question many people are asking. The honest answer is complicated. No evidence suggests the station is facing immediate catastrophic failure. NASA and Roscosmos continue to monitor the situation carefully. Safety systems remain operational. Astronauts remain protected. However, the leak demonstrates that the station is entering a new phase of its life. A phase where aging infrastructure becomes increasingly important. Future repairs may become more frequent. Operational risks may become more challenging. And difficult decisions about the station's future may become unavoidable. The end of an era. For millions of people, the ISS represents the symbol of human cooperation in space. A place where former rivals work together. A place where science transcended politics. a place where humanity learned how to live beyond Earth. Its eventual retirement will mark the end of one of the most successful chapters in space exploration history. But every ending creates a beginning. The technologies developed aboard the ISS are already helping shape missions to the Moon. The lessons learned there will help future astronauts reach Mars. And the next generation of stations may accomplish things that seem impossible today. Conclusion. The recent evacuation preparations aboard the International Space Station were not the beginning of a disaster, but they were a reminder that even humanity's greatest engineering achievements are not permanent. For more than 25 years, the ISS has carried humanity's presence in orbit. It has survived countless challenges. It continues to operate today. Yet the station is growing older. The mysterious air leak is only one chapter in a much larger story. A story about the future of human spaceflight. A story about what comes after the ISS. And a story about how humanity will continue pushing farther into the cosmos. Because one day, the International Space Station will be gone. The real question is, what will replace it? And are we ready for the next chapter of life in space?